Morning everyone, thanks very much for joining us on our retail webinar, which is called Assessing the Positive Impact of COVID-19 for Grocery. My name's Matt James from YouGov, and before we go any further, I just want to cover off a little bit of housekeeping. So yeah, this webinar, you'll have noticed, is voice only. We're just wanting to sort of preserve precious bandwidth and make sure that we'll get good quality sound and vision as much as possible. And if you have any questions for us, please write them in the chat function, and we will collate those and ask those to our panelists towards the end of the session. And obviously, if we run out of time, you know, we will get through as many as possible. If we run out of time, we will follow up afterwards with any that we don't get to. And also, you may have noticed we're recording this webinar. We'll share the recording and the deck with everyone on the call afterwards. So these copies of these slides will be available. So right, let's crack on and just introduce our panelists. So here with us today, we're really lucky to have our experts. So guys, I'll just hand over to you here just to introduce yourselves. Sean, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks Matt, thanks for inviting me today. For those that don't know me, my name is Sean Russell. I'm the Marketing Director at Costcutter, so I look after all marketing and communications. We're a symbol group in the UK. We're just over 1,500 stores that are operated by independent retailers.
Cool, thanks Sean.
Hi, my name's Emma White. I'm Research Manager at Ocado. For those of you who don't know, Ocado is an online-only grocery retailer, so we deliver food and drink to customers around the UK. We were set up in 2001. We've been delivering groceries ever since, and recently we've formed Ocado Retail, which is the food and drink delivery business, and we're currently planning a joint venture with M&S as well to take them on board into Ocado.
Awesome. And Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Wolfson. I'm the food and drink editor on the Grocer magazine. We're the leading title for UK food and drink retail. As the food and drink editor, I head up all our coverage of brands, products, NPD, and supply chain.
Great, thanks guys. Thanks for the intros. So yeah, and just a brief note on myself. So I'm Matt James, and I lead the YouGov offering for our retail clients. So just to sort of introduce sort of what we are going to be discussing today. So first of all, you're going to hear a little bit from me, learning about the kind of the wider perspective on the current consumer context from YouGov data, and then I'll kind of share a little bit of information about online grocery shopping, and then we'll hear some more from Emma at Ocado, some findings around convenience, at which point we'll hear from Sean, and then finally some data around sort of category behaviour, and at that point we'll speak to Daniel, and then we'll end on some questions from you guys as well. So okay, so the current consumer context, just wanted to get a bit of an overview around sort of how people are feeling right now, because obviously this forms the backdrop to the data and the conversation that we're going to be having today. So first of all, just wanted to share the latest analysis from YouGov and the Centre for Economics and Business Research. And it's showing really a dramatic effect on British consumers' economic outlook. So versus where we were at the end of 2019, confidence has really taken a downturn, sort of free falling sort of throughout April, dropping 5.9 points to 92.7. And this is a score of less than 100, which means that now we're in sort of negative territory. And this metric's really at the lowest level we've seen since January 2012. So 7 of the 9 constituent metrics that make up the index fell during April, and basically something that sort of helps contextualise this is that sort of 86% of people believe that we're heading towards a recession, and nearly sort of 9 in 10 believe that unemployment will rise. So, you know, people aren't that confident right now. But it's just, at the moment, it's just a feeling, obviously. And, you know, just to sort of further contextualise, you know, from a list of financial and economic concerns, most Brits, so that's 83%, are concerned about local businesses. So businesses like bars, restaurants, independent shops, being unable to recover financial losses. That's just ahead of a concern about global recession. So we can see a strong concern here from people about the communities they live in, and people are probably wondering, you know, what they'll look like, what the high street will look like after this crisis. So not a great picture in terms of feeling, but what's actually going on right now, what the actual changes that people are experiencing. And we can see here that, you know, despite the concerns, you know, in the short term, compared with last month, 2/3, so about sort of 65% of people, are saying that their household's financial situation has either not changed or improved. And to give that some context, so versus all of 2019, that figure was 78%. So whilst there's a slight increase in people saying they don't know, there's only a 10% increase in people saying that their situation has worsened. So, you know, current, you know, what's actually going on right now, you know, isn't quite as bad as the kind of their sort of confidence in the future reflects. So, wanted to move on now. So that's a bit of a backdrop to what's going on. We'll move on now to the online grocery channel. So we've given that a wider perspective on the economy. Let's have a look at the online grocery channel. So online spending is up overall, and grocery are really sort of leading the way, with over a quarter of UK adults saying that they've been spending more on online groceries, and almost half of shoppers are choosing the online grocery channel for their main shopping mission. And, you know, now that increase in demand in online hasn't come without its challenges for both businesses and consumers. So our data shows that there's been a mixed experience of online shopping reported at the start of lockdown. And when we experienced that kind of step change in behaviour, so many people moved from offline to online, and also during this time there's quite a lot of anxiety from shoppers, and many people sort of panic buying. So, you know, a sort of perfect storm of sort of things changing in the market. This has led to over half of online grocery shoppers, so 54%, saying that their experience of getting the items they wanted was negative, but still 40% staying positive. And on balance, more people were dissatisfied with the time spent queuing online, so 40% reporting a negative experience versus 41% positive. Two measures that were net positive were speed of delivery and the measures taken by retailers to prevent the spread of the virus. And then moving on from that initial lockdown period to where we are now, we can see that behavioural changes are seemingly here to stay. So with 32% of people saying that they will make more use of online shopping generally as a result of coronavirus. So at this point, I'd like to bring in Emma from Ocado. So Emma, you know, reflecting on that data and you know your experiences, so what have you learned in this period of mass demand for online grocery?
Well, hi again, everybody. What have we learned in this period of mass demand? Well, initially, our first concern and what the measures we put in first of all to protect was safety and measures to protect the spread of the virus. So we had to think about our customers' safety and our colleagues' and drivers' safety as well. We had to reduce the points of contact, and like all delivery services, we had to rethink the way we make our deliveries. We've started to leave shopping on the doorstep instead of carrying it in to our customers' kitchens, hallways. Previously, we would pride ourselves that our drivers would always carry the shopping in if needed, maybe for older people, even up 6 flights of stairs, which is the case for my daughter's flat. But in this case now we are leaving on the doorstep in common with most other delivery people, and we're not taking back carrier bags from our customers. Our previous system was a recycle system of carrier bags in which our customers would give us back their bags each week. Now, because the virus can live on hard surfaces, we're not taking back those bags, and our customers unfortunately have to store them in their homes. So we had to take these measures. As you said, Matt, in your slide, I think customers and the general public are happy to accept these safety measures. As you said, 75% are positive, just 6% are negative in their attitudes to the way we're handling the safety. So that is a point of pride that we've managed to achieve that. So another thing that we've learned is, well, how did we respond to this over demand? What did we do? It was unprecedented. As everybody knows, we're now in a completely different pattern of shopping behaviour. People are making fewer trips. They're spending more on each trip with a much bigger basket each time. There's been a 34% by value increase in average basket size, according to Nielsen data for April. So that's really going up. And that means there's been a large increase as well in online grocery spend. There's, again, Nielsen is saying there's been a 48% increase in online grocery spend. And the platform, the channel, has also seen 1.9 million completely new shoppers coming to online grocery. So it really is a very different way of shopping. What we found ourselves faced with was that all of our active shoppers, maybe around 800,000 shoppers, wanted to place at least one order a week with us. That's several times our current capacity. And given the fact that families were at home at this point during lockdown every day, they're eating all their meals at home, whereas before we seen, for example, breakfast as a meal occasion wasn't such a big deal. It's now growing hugely. We've seen a 50% rise in the average size of our customers' orders. And the fact is that we can't deliver to more than a fixed number of homes, which is currently around 250,000 to 300 homes on a weekly basis. So we are constrained by what our capacity is. Our business model is that we have 3 high-tech customer fulfillment centres and various spokes around the country, and the picking of the groceries is done in many cases automatically by robots. And it is very difficult for us, unlike some of the other online providers, to actually increase our capacity. It may be that other companies with stores can employ more colleagues to help them get more orders out there. For Ocado, all we can do is think about maximising what we can get out and serve our customers better. That's what we've been trying to do. The way we've done it, and it has given rise to some difficult decisions, is that we've had to proactively manage the situation. We had to take some hard decisions. So we closed our online app temporarily. Our app is really popular with our customers, but it was putting too much pressure on the system. We had to close it down, and it is still temporarily closed. We had to temporarily suspend our website for a few days in March while we put in a new system to enable customers to access our website. So we had to be really fleet-footed and completely reconfigure our website just in that short time. And what we had to do was accept the fact that not all our customers could be served as they would like at that current time. So we had to take that decision. We had to give access to vulnerable people on the government's shield list, first and foremost. And after that, we had to give access to our most loyal and long-standing customers as well. And I think the consequence of this, going back to the slide you showed, Matt, earlier, you were talking about some of the problems and challenges customers had experienced with online shopping, which was down to queuing and availability. Some of our customers who would dearly love to get slots with Ocado find at the moment that they're having to queue to get on the website, and that is leading to disappointment. The same with availability. We are running at only 2% of items in an order are missing, so we're pretty good on the fulfillment of the accuracy of the order, but nevertheless, as we all have found, it tends to be those key items that you can't get that are affecting perceptions. It might be bread flour, it might be Marmite, whatever it is, customers are finding themselves to be disappointed with the system. Whereas in a store system, you go in the shop, you see what's there, and it's often the way that customers will tailor their experience to what they see. So those are the difficulties that we've had to face. Looking forward, we've had to think about what's going to happen in the future, and it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen. One thing we think that's going to happen in the future, from what we've seen from our own research, is that people in the UK are showing an increased intention to shop with us if they can in the future. It's indicating that there's been, in some ways, quite a major attitudinal shift with regards to shopping online for groceries. And I know for shopping online generally as well, from what the slide Matt showed, but particularly for food and drink, fewer are now rejecting online as a channel. It's becoming, we know what the historical barriers are to shopping for groceries online. It's that people like to go to a store and physically pick out the nice looking fruit and veg, the items with the best use by dates. They want to go along and do the shopping themselves so they can pick out exactly what they want. That is being chipped away. That preference is being eroded by the current situation that many people find themselves in. They're having to reduce the number of trips they're able to make to the shops. That means online becomes a much more acceptable alternative. Attitudes are changing. They are changing, and we know that the group of people who had most resistance to shopping online for groceries was older people, 55 pluses. They still do hold those barriers, but it's chipping away, and there's been some large decreases in the proportions in those over 55-year-old people who are saying, I don't want to shop online and I want to choose my groceries myself. That is reducing among the general public. So we are expecting the demand to continue, and in response to that, we were already increasing our capacity. A lot of people have said Ocado, they would like Ocado to deliver to where they live, and they would like to get a slot with Ocado. What we've done here is we've tried to maximize the slots that we've got available. We've stopped delivering mineral water on our vans because it was taking up too much space and it was taking up too much of our delivery slots. So we took that away. We temporarily reduced promotions on site during March so that customers wouldn't be able to, again, bulk buy too much, reducing slots for other customers. Proactively, we are building new customer fulfillment centres. We've got 3 being built at the moment. There's one in Bristol, work's still continuing on now that construction workers are getting back on site. That's going to mean 30,000 new orders on a weekly basis. So we're looking to increase our capacity. We're working 24/7 to get as much out there to customers as we can. And we're taking on extra colleagues as well to try and maximise that process. The final thing I want to say that we've learned in response to this mass demand is around value. And Matt, you showed that slide with the economic outlook, and We've seen the measures yesterday and the announcement from Rishi Sunak about unemployment. He's not predicting a quick bounce back, and you confirm that consumer confidence is in the negatives. We know that's important to people. That's why we are committed to great value. We've now got promotions up and running across our site. We've got the ever popular 3 for 10 on meat and fish back up and running and popular with our customers on there. We run a price matching system called Low Price Promise, where we give a voucher for shopping if the shopping would have been cheaper at Tesco. So we're trying to do everything we can to get great value out there for customers. Just one final point on the conundrum you raised, Matt, about how the economic downturn doesn't seem to be quite yet permeating in how people feel about their own personal finances. It seems to be the case from other research I've seen that people feel, because they're spending less at the moment during lockdown, we're all in a kind of, some people are in a kind of bubble whereby they feel like they have more disposable income at the moment just due to spending less. That doesn't mean that they don't predict the situation to get much worse. So I think, yeah, that's my overview on response to mass demand.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Emma. Really interesting to hear, about how the challenges sort of outlined in the data up front there, how they're actually sort of manifesting themselves, within Ocado and I'm sure, online grocery in general. And again, it's also interesting, great point about, sort of people feeling that, finances are, probably not too bad at the moment, but interesting to hear about some of the kind of the mechanisms you've got in place to come as well, so which I'm sure are going to be important. So thanks very much for that, Emma. I'm going to move on now to the convenience channel and just take you through some of the data we've seen in relation to physical retail and sort of how the sort of behavioural changes are really sort of posing challenges and potentially opportunities as well for convenience. So as I mentioned, among bricks and mortar retailers, grocery was the only sector to see a net increase in spend, very similar to what we've seen online. Here, I guess just to focus in a bit more specifically, so overall spend is up. But looking at convenience in particular, we can see that, of the channels we can see here, most people are saying that they're using sort of corner shops convenience more often. So 23% of Brits are saying that they're using convenience stores more. But obviously this is being tempered with over a third of Brits saying that they've shopped less frequently at their local corner shops since lockdown. And this is a similar picture across the board, as we can see, with this is likely being caused by concerns around the virus and the desire for social distancing. So it'd be interesting to see that corner shops are sort of topping that list. And then just coming back to one of the points raised at the top of the session, the biggest lifestyle change that Brits plan to continue is to support local businesses, with 63% of Brits saying that they will support their local businesses much more. And also, to link to the point around community as well, 23% say that they will take more active part in my community. This is nice to hear, and perhaps particularly for the convenience channel. So Sean, I'm gonna bring you in here. So do you think this increase in shopping at convenience stores is here to stay? What does it mean for Costcutter?
Yeah, thanks again, Matt, for inviting me. In terms of Costcutter, just to clarify, in introduction, I think it's helpful for us just to position really a purpose as an organisation is to help independent retailers thrive. And we do that by enabling them to bring communities together. So we believe we've got a really important role within the community, and a forward-looking ambition, a vision, if you like, is to be the most loved and the most shopped symbol group in the UK, and the YouGov data is certainly helpful in terms of tracking where we are on that journey. Perhaps I can just start by referring to the recent survey that you mentioned, in particular that slide, where it stated 63% of Brits who said they're going to make some changes plan to support local businesses from now on. I think given what I just said at the beginning there, is that's a lifestyle change we would really welcome at Costcutter. In terms of what we've experienced, I think it's fair to say that footfall is actually down across all physical channels. Now, there's various data points for this, but the ballpark for convenience channel would be about a 20% decrease versus pre-lockdown levels. And convenience is, you know, probably less of a decline than supermarkets, and Costcutter is certainly much less pronounced in UK convenience. But having said that, people are spending more, so basket spend is up. Again, lots of data points for this, but a conservative estimate would be, as a channel, you're probably looking at about a 33% increase, and Costcutter is performing ahead of that in terms of basket spend. You know, typically people are spending the best part of a tenner within convenience stores now. So generally speaking, you know, people coming in less but spending more. And as your data suggests, we've got some new shoppers coming into convenience stores. And I think it's you know, the right question, how can we keep them? And I guess the way that I would position this is, you know, how do we help our independent retailers convert lifeline shoppers into lifelong shoppers? And if I just drill into that in a bit more detail, if we look at who's coming into the store and what are they actually purchasing, I think that would be helpful. I'll probably just preface this with the statement that, you know, yes, we've got new shoppers coming in, but that's very much a generalisation. There are some stores, particularly in highly transient areas, that would over-index on things like, you know, food to go as an example, as a footfall generator. Many of these stores have had to reformat or reflow their stores to reflect a change in shopping mission, and some of those stores, unfortunately, have had to close. So I think it's important to recognise there's no one-size-fits-all solution. However, it's true to say more people are working at home than ever before, and for community and some inner city stores, people who are or would have been commuting or eating lunch at work or school, they're now eating at home. And I think the data suggested about a quarter are more likely to work from home more, and a similar amount said they're going to travel much less for work in the future. So I think there's an expectation or an understanding that this Monday to Friday 9 till 5 isn't going to return to the same extent, and therefore, you know, there may be less commuter traffic, and there is a potential that this type of occasion will continue to depend on buying or making your lunch from the local community convenience store. This is probably a good point just to touch on the customer base. So I guess as these shopper missions continue to evolve, so will the customer base within these physical stores. So I would probably say at an aggregated level, about 15% of people who live within a mile, 2 miles of a Costcutter store are going to be around between 55 and 64. Probably a similar amount, 15%, are going to be 65 and above. There will be certain types of stores that over-index on elderly customers, and with the vulnerable and with shielding, etc., you know, they may not be as inclined to come into the physical store. So what we're doing is working really closely with those stores to identify how we can help them expand their services, still cater for that part of the community. You know, for example, we were one of the first symbol groups to launch last mile delivery with Uber Eats. About a year ago, we've got many stores that are using that platform. And some of the stores that are really embracing that platform are seeing, you know, quite a bit of demand coming through there, like Emma mentioned. I would say the stores that are really embracing that well can see retail sales of anywhere between 20 and up to £50,000 per week coming through. per month, sorry, coming through that particular channel. So if you embrace it as a store, that there is demand there, and I think your research said about 32% stated they would make more use of online shopping. I would agree with the statement that physical and online presence are becoming much more blurred or blended. And really what we've seen through COVID is an acceleration of that process. Interesting to see that the data split by age that suggests you're more likely to be trialing or dependent on online shopping the older that you are. So in terms of what we're doing to reflect that change in customer base and help the local stores, we've got a program called Shopper First. So we help our stores understand their local demographics and who could be shopping with them by channel. And I guess as the demographic data and the missions crystallise, we'll effectively be updating that as a COVID toolkit to help retailers continue to serve their community as the needs of that community evolves. Now, I know Daniel's going to talk about this in more detail in just a minute, so I won't spend too much time on this particular point about categories and what people are buying. Just a couple of things that leap off the page to me on this point. There's the impulse or treat mission, so that I'm just going to have that extra bar of chocolate, or ice cream is a good one. Strong growth in ice cream at the moment with fine weather. We're also seeing that form part of a big night in occasion. Alcohol sales remain very high. We've seen an increase in larger slabs, 18 pack beers, which I think is more down to manufacturing efficiencies than a change in customer behaviour. And I've probably put on a few pounds myself, to be honest. I'm fortunate that I'm still working. I've got disposable income. I'm more inclined to treat myself and have a big night in because I've nowhere else to go. And I'm more inclined to scratch cook, be that baking, be that cooking a meal. We're seeing that also increase in our stores. And we're very fortunate that, unlike some corner stores, we've got a really credible fresh offer, which we've been building up over the last 2 years. For those that don't know, we offer the Co-op own brands in our stores. And I actually think that's one of the main reasons building up that fresh offer is one of the main reasons we've got a slightly higher basket spend than the convenience average. Actually, data from YouGov is really helpful, allowing us to understand the impact of fresh on our brands. As well as tracking brand index, we track the quality metric, and we can see that grow in line with the growth of fresh foods within our estate. Now, all of that and those changes of shopping missions, if you like, for me, that's probably less about supermarket spend switching into convenience, probably more around the food service, restaurants, etc., being unavailable and that spend switching into convenience. So the really interesting trend for us will be what happens as those restaurants and bars start to reopen. Can we retain those customers and convert them into lifelong shoppers, sorry. And I think there's a couple of things that need to be true for that to happen. There's a couple of really basic points. One's on health and safety. I think there's been, as Emma mentioned, a fantastic industry response to the implementing of social distancing. We actually give away all our social distancing guides for any store, whether it's a competitor, to download and use for free. We actually think collaboration across industry is really important on that topic, and actually having a consistency of approach is the right thing to do. And second, having consistency at the shelf edge. The supply chain is still very much in the recovery phase, but we all know how important it is to have on-shelf availability to keep those customers coming back. I don't know if any of my colleagues from Co-op or NICE are on the call, but if they are, just an opportunity to thank them for their ongoing support and working with us to maintain supply during what's been an unprecedented level of demand. Actually, that collaboration piece is one thing that we know is important to customers. You know, I hear from customers a lot of brands quite samey at the moment. But when I look at sort of buzz, impressions, reputation scores, whenever we do something collaboratively, often through the British Retail Consortium around Feeding the Nation, you can really see that that resonates with the public. So I think the health and safety, consistency at the shelf edge are basics that we need to have. And there's two other things that I would just want to call out in terms of how do we keep shoppers and turn them from lifeline into lifelong. The first thing is, we said we wanted to help local retailers thrive, enable them to connect with the communities. So by providing stores with local, store-specific demographic data and recommendations, we can do that, and that's now more important than ever. So I think with their Shopper First programme, we're well placed within the sector to do it. And then second, it's all about having the right offer. Two main components to that. You mentioned the economic downturn. Having a strong value proposition is going to be super important. I think you know, the clue is in the name, Costcutter. So we've got some good equity in that space. But secondly, having the right fresh offer, I think, is really important. You know, people want to do a full shop within their convenience store, and you know, we're seeing stores wanting to open and join us because of that fresh offer at the current time. The last point I would just want to make is the focus on digital. This blending of online and offline experience is super important, and we will be doing everything that we can to enable our retailers to tap into that and serve their local communities. So, you know, in summary, I think it's been a challenging period for many independent retailers, but you know, by working together, I think we're really confident that we can help those retailers thrive in the future.
Wow, so much really interesting insight there, Sean. Thanks for that. Really interesting to hear, actually. Something for me was about the collaboration. You know, I think, you know, I've seen a lot of data around sort of people and brands doing it that now is, you know, at a time more about sort of, you know, serving rather than competing. And it's interesting to hear about, you know, the impact of that collaboration on brand health. And yeah, just so much around sort of like occasion and, you know, the switch from on trade and how that's impacting, you know, probably convenience more than anywhere else. And I'll be really interested to see how many of these sort of shifts are sort of more sticky, sort of coming out of this crisis. And, you know, as we try and move back to, you know, what is normal, and, you know, all the businesses, you know, shops and bars and restaurants open up again. So yeah. No, thanks for that.
Pleasure.
That was great.
On that point, we've seen businesses that are collaborating within the retail sector using the YouGov data. We've seen their brand health improve. The ones that haven't collaborated have been flat or declined. So I think the point is really valid, that it matters to customers. Yeah.
No, great. All right, thanks, Sean. We'll move on now to category behaviour. If I can get my slides to work. Here we go. So we're going to take a look at some category behaviour in terms of grocery retail. Just starting with some data around sort of eating behaviour. And, you know, I can say I know where I sit here. But in general, Brits are eating more and eating less healthily whilst in lockdown. So we can see that, you know, 2 in 5, so 40% of adults say that they're eating more during lockdown, and just under half, 47%, so they're eating the same amount. So only 12% of Britons are saying that they have cut down. And then when we look at sort of what they're eating, so 25% of Britons are saying they're eating less healthy than before, compared to 8% who are say they're eating healthier to pre-lockdown levels. So you know, most say that the quality of their diet is about the same, but, you know, interesting to see that the balance really has shifted to sort of maybe slightly less healthier. And then we took a look at our brand index data, and this really sort of stood out to us in terms of some of the types of foods and categories that are seeing changes. And we see here that Britons are eating more, but one interesting shift in our Plan Track data here has sort of revealed that there's a boost in sales of cooking sauces, so and especially among parents. So looking at the three major brands here, Dolmio, Patak's, Uncle Ben's, we can see that all three have seen positive changes in current customer scores amongst Gen Pop, but this is really pronounced amongst parents with kids in the household. And we're kind of hypothesising here that this is a result of parents attempting to replicate their favourite cuisines at home, given that the restaurants are closed. We've got Chinese, Italian, and Indian. They're all sort of topping the charts among parents' favourite cuisines, just behind British food, which is number one. But interesting to see that these are the ones that have jumped up, whilst our favourite restaurants and bars are closed right now. And also, perhaps an indication that parents are finding slightly more time to prepare a family meal as well. So in addition to cooking sauces, snacks and confectionery have also been on the up, especially amongst certain demographics as well. And then just kind of moving on to alcohol, and coming back to the fact that bars are shut. So another trend we've seen in Plan and Track data is that whilst the on-premise is closed, the demand for alcohol amongst Britons really persists. Brits are drinking the same, if not more, during lockdown, demonstrating that shift to off-trade. So 29% of British drinkers say they're now drinking more alcohol than usual. This is up from 17% when asked during the first week of lockdown. And we're also seeing consumption levels they haven't changed, but the channel mix has, as people are sort of moving to sort of buying alcohol from the shops rather than in pubs. And then coming back to lifestyle changes. So despite that current behaviour, looking to the future, we can see that over a third of Brits are saying that they're planning to buy much more green and sustainable produce as a result of coronavirus. So people probably sort of, maybe having a slight sort of reality check around sort of health and well-being and looking to make changes. So at this point, I'm going to bring in Daniel from the Grocer. So Daniel, so looking at these kind of real sort of top lines, what are you experiencing in the industry, and what have you observed in terms of category behaviour?
Well, there are clearly big changes going on in terms of what people are buying and what people are eating and drinking. I think there's a bit of a question around working out which of these are permanent and going to hang around after lockdown, which of course we don't know yet. So something like the intense demand for flour over recent months. I don't know about you, but my social media has been packed with endless photos of people's sourdoughs, different styles of loaves that they've been baking at home, and to the extent that a lot of supermarket shelves are actually completely devoid of flour for weeks over the past couple of months. I'd say something like that is probably going to dry up a bit of people having to start going to work again or coming off furlough, because I've never tried to bake sourdough, but my understanding is it takes quite a lot of time and people simply won't have that time to do it if they're back at work as normal or with a resemblance of normality. Likewise with things like cooking sauces, these are massively appealing if you're a family who all of a sudden you don't have your kids at school all day, you've got no external childcare because of social distancing. These things are quick, they're simple, they're easy to put together. But when kids go back to school or childcare is resumed in some form, are people going to keep buying and using these products with the same ferocity? So there are kind of contrasting dynamics. When it comes to people saying that they're eating more and eating less healthy, which would seem to go against one of the biggest consumer trends over the past few years, which is the trend towards wellness and greater awareness of health. I'm not sure whether this is a temporary or a permanent change. I'd say it's probably more a side effect of people boredom eating. There's a lot of stress. When people say they're eating less healthily, there's also a lack of wider exercise. Gyms are closed, so maybe people are more broadly feeling less healthy, and it's playing out there. And it's important to remember for me that the more pervasive consumer trends of the last couple of years, so stuff like plant-based eating, health and wellness products, low and non-alcoholic drinks, are still selling really, really, really strong. I've heard from many low and no alcoholic brands recently over the past weeks who are having an absolutely great time in terms of sales. So wellness is still massive. Deliveroo this week signed a deal to distribute CBD as a supplement across London. So those things aren't going away, despite the fact that more consumers say they're eating less healthy and are eating more. One of the things that I think is really encouraging is that shoppers still have sustainability on the agenda. So as you said, 37% said they want to buy more green, more sustainable goods, which kind of flies in the face of some of the stories around COVID being a detraction to the sustainability agenda. Plastic is sadly having a bit of a renaissance at the moment, despite the Food Standards Agency insists that it's very unlikely that you can catch coronavirus from food. We've been hearing from bodies like WRAP who are saying that sales of packaged foods, particularly in the fresh categories, are up. And on a practical level, there's also that supermarket, fish, deli, meat counters have all been closed. And if people are ordering more takeaways, that brings a surge of plastic containers into circulation, most of which is single use, and a lot of it could end up in landfill. We just don't know yet. There's also a double whammy that laws that were going to be brought in to improve sustainability have been delayed, like the plastic straw ban, and the charge on single-use plastic bags in some supermarkets has been lifted. But the supplier base is still pushing ahead with really big packaging changes that are all for the good. So for instance, this week we've seen Barilla, which is a huge pasta brand, completely ditch plastic from their packaging. So suppliers and consumers aren't letting that sustainability angle slip. But I guess this is another one of those only time will tell scenarios with consumer confidence falling and household incomes hit, even though, as we mentioned earlier, it's only at a point of around 10%. We're going to see sustainability credentials really tested in terms of whether they can actually drive purchase if, compared to more value options, if that slide in consumer confidence continues. There are a lot of brands over the past couple of years that have taken big bets that their sustainability credentials will be able to make someone change purchase and will really improve their standing with shoppers. I think we're going to see if they can walk with those claims for the moment. So overall, I don't think it's necessarily the case that the pre-coronavirus category dynamics are no longer relevant. It's just that they're kind of lost in the mush with some of these really extreme dynamics that have appeared over the past couple of weeks. One of the interesting angles is the side effects of all this for suppliers. So, we talk about people using more cooking sauces, especially in, Italian, stuff like bolognese, all these sorts. So in the meat industry, there's been huge concerns over carcass balance because people are eating more meat than anything else, which is also linked to the decline of the hospitality industry because people aren't eating steaks in restaurant and more expensive cuts. In booze as well, the effect this has all had on alcohol is really interesting. I know anecdotally from talking to booze suppliers that, as you would expect, they're seeing a move into bigger packs, especially in beer. Multi-packs, 10 packs are really, really selling. But I guess that it's wrong to infer strictly from that those suppliers are necessarily laughing. For many of them, the on-trade was half their business, and in some cases a more profitable side. So while the surge in retail is helpful, it's not necessarily a silver bullet. You know, we saw figures from the BBPA last week, I think it was, that 70 million pints, the equivalent of 70 million pints, have been poured down the drain in fresh.
Wow.
You know, yes, people are buying lots, but liquid milk has really struggled because of the loss of food service, and we've seen over 1 million pints went to waste in April because of this. And, you know, the dairy industry is splashing out on a massive advertising push at the moment. In Stilton, same thing, whilst it has good distribution in the malt, the lack of hospitality and the lack of restaurant sales is a really real challenge. So I guess for booze, that sales are transferring from the on to the off trade is a definite bonus, but it's not a silver bullet. And one of the positive things I think we've seen in booze in particular is that suppliers are being really creative about how they transfer assets from the on to off trade, if you will. A lot of flexibility. You know, Budweiser, for instance, doing direct to store deliveries, delivering to co-op stores through Matthew Clark, which was their on trade route to market. You know, craft brewers who are really suffering, delivering 10-litre mini kegs to people the same day in London. One of the questions I have is we've spoken about how sentiment towards local businesses is improving, you know, towards smaller retailers, C-stores. I'd be curious to find out whether this applies to smaller, independent, or out there brands as well. You know, lots of small challenger brands have taken the direct-to-consumer route over the past months. They've launched big D2C offers where, you know, brands like Piccolo, like Meatless Farm, among others, you can now go direct from them and it will be delivered to you without by sidestepping traditional retail. I think it's going to be interesting to see how sustainable and successful these D2C businesses are, and whether this lockdown and those having come about as a result of this lockdown makes that divergence from traditional retail more viable in the long run. In terms of what people are eating as well, we talked about cooking sauces and the cuisines that people are eating. I think it's interesting that people are kind of giving up some of the more exploratory tastes that were hugely on trend before all this, you know. So we wrote for many, many years in the lead up to this about the rise of more exotic cuisines like Vietnamese, Mexican, all sorts of stuff that was largely driven by the on-trade and don't seem to be picking up at home in lockdown. You know, maybe people don't feel as confident cooking some of those cuisines from further afield. You know, what you would get from Chinese, Indian, Italian cooking sauces, less daunting to cook from scratch. Although, you know, over the past year, we've seen a lot of suppliers try and bring things like Vietnamese and, you know, cooking kits to the masses. So it'll be interesting to see whether people return to those tastes once lockdown is eased. My last point,
sorry, go on.
I've got the time,
Yep.
is around the implication for NPD, for new products. The big question seems to be, is now a good time to launch new products, and how are shoppers reacting to it? So there have been cases that we've seen in categories like pasta, where new launches that were penned in for later in the year, actually as a result of the coronavirus demand, were brought forward to accommodate that, which is great news if, you know, you're a supplier and suddenly you've got a deal and you're selling loads of volume through one of the malts. But I don't know if it's necessarily a great indicator of whether you've built any loyalty, because you don't really know whether people are actively choosing your brand, or whether they're buying because it's the last one on the shelf because everything else is sold. But the picture, and I can say this anecdotally as well, there was a bit of a drop-off in new product launches at the start of lockdown, and a lot of understandable uncertainty. It's feeling very much to us at the grocer like the NPD train has come to life again. You know, major launches over the past few weeks. Copperberg going into hard seltzer, Doritos launching, you know, a big competitor to Pringles in the form of Stax crisps. You know, loads of action in the ready meal category. You know, lots of kind of vegan, free from very kind of modern, trendy revitalisation of ready meals, and big plans from small brands. You know, I spoke to a brand called Kirsty's, a ready meal brand who do free-from ready meals, who are building the UK's first dedicated allergen-free ready meal factory, regardless of the coronavirus. You know, so the opportunity and the enthusiasm and the supplier base is still there. I think going forward, and this is the last point that I'll make on this, is given that people are probably spending less time browsing fixtures when they're actually in supermarkets, and you know, I don't know about you, I've certainly found shopping in person a bit more stressful at the moment, and it probably will be that way for a while. You know, there are questions for suppliers around, you know, how they can think about boosting standout on shelf with packaging. You know, how are they going to get people to sample and try new things going forward? Is that desire still going to be there? But, you know, my understanding of it is that buyers are still keen for new news. Interesting range reviews that were planned before COVID are still going ahead. Tesco's craft range review last month, for instance, really interesting, really forward-thinking. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Apologies for the rant there.
Oh, that's right. It was a great rant. Thanks for that, Dan. Again, you know, lots of really interesting stuff there. You know, one that particularly sort of stood out to me was the part around, you know, the size of business. You know, all right, you know, people are wanting to shop more local, but actually, will they be supporting, you know, smaller sort of craft and niche brands as well? Be they on the shelf, you know, in a supermarket or D2C, you know, direct to consumer. That'll be interesting to see. And just the point around sustainability, you know, I think it'll be interesting to see how that behaviour plays out. But also, you know, it's a challenge for the retailers as well. You know, how can they help, you know, consumers, shoppers fulfil that ambition, you know, while sort of tempering that with the, you know, a really strong value proposition, which we know is, you know, we feel like is going to be required. So, yeah, lots of stuff when you get down to sort of category level, lots going on. It'd be interesting to see what sticks and what these trends actually do sort of play out. So, no, thanks for that. We've got a couple of minutes left. We've got a couple of questions here, which I'll try and cover off. Some of them, and those we don't get to, we'll follow up separately after the session. So, Sean, we'll come to you just around on convenience. So, I've got a question here. Do you see a long-term change in the product mix for convenience? I mean, you touched on it earlier, but I mean, do you think this is long-term?
Yeah, so for me, COVID has in many respects been an accelerant of you know, what was already the direction of travel. I think fresh foods and having a credible fresh food offer is a must-have for convenience stores today. So I think that is a long-term trend. The one for me that's a question, and I'm not clear on what the longer-term impact will be, is on food to go and things like loose. You know, loose vegetables, etc. You know, to what extent will that recover? And you know, if COVID is here to stay for the foreseeable future, what are the longer term impacts that'll have on things like, I think Dan mentioned it, packaging, on things like food to go, veg, etc.
Right. Okay. No, thanks for that. Interesting stuff. I'm going to move on to the next one. We've got 1 minute left. Emma, so from an Ocado perspective, being, you know, very unique, you're online only, for you guys, what do you predict to be the biggest change in shoppers' behaviour, and will that differ to your competitors, do you think?
Yeah, good question. Biggest change in shoppers' behaviour. Well, it's the biggest change a change we found very difficult to manage is the increased basket size, and everybody has agreed customers going to the shops are buying more at one time, and also online they're buying more at any one time. The interesting point for us is, as the situation eases, will customers continue to shop less frequently for more? Will they go back to what we all know was the previous trend, to shop more frequently for less? So as we all know, people used to be popping in the local store on the way home, picking up dinner for the night. That doesn't happen for so many reasons. So it's very difficult to predict this. My own feeling is it is a long-term trend now, and because there's a significant proportion of people who may not be returning to the way they used to live and work before, for whatever reasons, the way they live and work before, like your people who say they're going to work at home more, they're going to shop local more. I'm feeling that some of these changes are a little bit more long-term, and some people are going to revert to the bigger baskets longer term as well, fewer trips. Okay,
no, so interesting. I guess online grocery sort of set itself up in around a certain sort of frequency and basket size. So it'd be interesting to see that how that sort of trend continues and how it impacts you guys. So guys, thanks very much for your time today to all of our participants, our panelists. I found it really interesting. Hope you did too. We're going to wrap it up there because we're out of time, and let everyone get back to their days. So hopefully you can tune into the next one too. So thanks very much, everyone. We'll follow up with the deck and any further questions as well. Thanks.